truth be told, there's a lot of water in the boat when it comes to people suffering right now because of the effects of the strict measures that were introduced during this third wave of COVID-19. Many people were just trying to get out of what the last year posed in terms of threats to their livelihoods, and not just threats, but what became a reality for many when they were not able to meet their needs, when they were not able to pay rent, when they were not able to buy food as normal, when they were not able to send their children to school or meet their needs when it came to medical care. A reality for very many people. And it would appear that as we got out of that really, again, choppy situation, just as things were starting to look up, then we went back into it. And we heard the horror stories of people who were thrown out of their homes, people whose houses or doors were locked, closed when they came back and were not able to access their homes anymore because of the fact that they were not able to pay. And this is not a book, it's not a story, it's not a fairy tale. It is the reality that very many people have not been able to pay. Now, we saw this happen again just 2-3 weeks ago when this announcement was made, and the realization, and unfortunately the nightmare, then became a reality for very many people all over again. People were not able to pay rent. People lost their jobs instantly, and that meant that what they were able to earn on a daily basis then disappeared. So we're back to the place, and we've seen the stories. We've seen the cries for help, the desperate pleas for help on social media. I mean, people who call you every day and needing help in one way or another. And that's the situation today. People can't meet their rent. Landlords also are at a place where they don't know what to do. Yes, some being malicious, as others would describe it, but have to throw people out because they're not able to pay, because that's what they depend on then to be able to live. So we are back where we were a year ago, 6 months ago, where people are not able to meet their rents. People are not able to buy food because they've lost their jobs. It's a difficult spot that a lot of people are in, but that is the reality. And the question is what to do, how to help, how do we navigate these choppy waters?
You know, the truth about COVID is that it's not going away soon. It is unlikely to go away soon. So anything that masquerades as a solution and yet in reality is wishful thinking doesn't help. And so long as we are talking about solutions that are possible and yet the means to achieve them are not put in place, all we'll be doing from day one to day, whichever in the future, is engaging in futile discussions and discourse. Reality is that a third world banana republic like ours requires a very focused attention on the people who need this help. We were poor and needy before COVID. We're now poorer and needier. Okay? And if the thinking of government seems to be the same as it was before, then it isn't even a catastrophe. It is a cataclysmic situation that we then find ourselves in. So if you're thinking about solutions, the solutions can't be the sort of solution that you slap on a small problem hoping that it will go away. This one is not going away because, one, even if COVID ends, the ripple effects of what COVID has brought into being will be with us for some time to come.
Let's go into the neighborhood then and have this conversation from that point. And we'll also be opening up the phone lines to hear your experience on 0719-012-600. But before we do that, let's hear from the CEO of the Kenya Association of Residents Associations, Henry Ochieng, who joins us now. Good morning, Henry.
Morning, how are you?
Very well, thank you. Welcome to the Situation Room. We're glad that you could join us.
Thank you very much.
So first, for many who may not know what CARA stands for, just tell us, who are your members? What do you do?
Thank you once again. Actually, the correct name is the Kenya Alliance of Resident Associations, CARA. And we are essentially an umbrella body of neighborhood organizations that look at how do we enhance access to public service delivery. So CARA brings together a number of residential associations in different parts of the country to strengthen the voice of the association and to engage the government and other service delivery providers to ensure that we are able to access service in a way that is useful to us, and also we are able to take charge of our neighborhood and provide solutions to whatever kind of challenges that is faced in that particular neighborhood. So in short, as Kara, we look at neighborhoods or people living within a particular estate being proactive in taking charge of what bedevils them in their neighborhoods, and also coming up with ideas and solutions that can enable them live a life of dignity and can enable them to be to get value for their taxes because they're taxpayers. So we look at how to empower resident associations through capacity building. We look at how to provide the right information to make them make informed choices and informed decisions, and also to provide opportunities for them to directly engage with people who are in position of decision making and come up with practical solutions to whatever kind of challenges they might be facing in their neighborhood. And also look at how do they add value, so that don't just talk about challenges, but we also talk about what other activities or initiatives people can engage with in a particular neighborhood to ensure that they are enjoying their neighborhood, they're living a life of dignity, and they're able to achieve whatever kind of aspirations they have for that particular neighborhood. So in short, that's essentially what Kara is.
All right. The aspirations are, I think, wonderful. They're even heartwarming. Where is it in your representative capacity have you seen this being actually actioned and put into place?
I think if you look around various neighborhoods, you will see that people are increasingly appreciating the need for unity, need to work together. And the idea or the concept about resident associations, of course, is mainly appreciated in what we could call the urban areas, the major urban areas, because this is where people are more aware about their rights and responsibility, and that people are demanding for better services and better value. So if you look across the various estates, whether it is in Nairobi, Mombasa, Kisumu, all these major urban areas, you'll see that people are coming together and forming resident associations so that they're not at the mercy of people who provide services, but they're able to engage on an equal footing, and they're able to identify where the problems are and come up with solutions in collaboration with various service providers. So when you ask where it is, then I can tell you it's practically across various neighborhoods, including where you're living. I'm sure if you check very clearly, you'll be able to see that people have organized themselves and they are really keen to ensure that they are in charge of their neighborhood and they want the best for their children, and the people who live in that particular area. So it's across various neighborhoods.
Okay. Henry, what has come to your attention in terms of what's happening with residents in certain areas, especially now when it comes to the after effects of the lockdowns that we see because of COVID-19? What are people suffering today? What's the situation on the ground?
The major issue, of course, is the issue of ability to meet obligations, and particularly obligations when it comes to paying rent. We have seen people being unable to pay rent as they were able to do previously. We've also seen people having to downgrade from perhaps middle income estates or neighborhoods to something slightly lower because they have to adjust given the low income that they are now experiencing. So what is coming out clearly is that there's a struggle at the neighborhood, there's a struggle at individual level, and people are looking at ways and means to make adjustments to ensure that they are able to fit within the current realities that has been brought about by COVID-19. We've seen, for instance, that there's been what we could call an exodus from high level, for instance, Kilimani, Lavington, and people are moving to the outskirts of Nairobi. There's a study that was done last year that shows that areas like Syokimau, Kitengela, Ongata Rongai, the satellite towns within the city, are actually experiencing an influx of new tenants because people are moving from areas that are high in terms of rent and moving to areas where they can be able to get cheaper houses. So in those areas, there's been a slight increase, even in rent, because now the landlords are also seeing that we are having more demand for our properties, and now there's increase. If you look at now what we call the middle income areas, like the Kilimani, the Kileleshwa, the Lavington of this world, you'll see that the rent that is being charged in those areas has come down slightly because the demand for houses in those particular areas has gone down. So that's also a pattern we've observed, that there's an adjustment in terms of where people are living. But I think the biggest problem has been the ability for people to pay rent. And of course, now we have to look at what do we do to ensure that the contractual obligation, of course, is not breached. But even if it is, then how do we have an arrangement where the landlord and the tenant can be able to come to an agreement on how to deal with the situation? As you may understand, is that when it comes to issues of tenant and landlord, this is an individual contractual arrangement. And so the two parties must be able to come together and have a discussion on what will be the best way forward, so that none of them suffers, but also at the same time we look at what are the realities and how do we make the necessary adjustments. So those are some of the observations that we've made. And of course, we know why we find ourselves in this situation, and it's because of the pandemic.
I know you say it's contractual obligation or contractual agreement between two individuals. This is the landlord and their tenant, but together they form the residents' associations wherever they are. I mean, the tenants will be members of that association. The landlords will also be participants and active participants in those associations. So in that whole idea of creating a bond between the members of a community, is there anything that Kara could do or has been able to do to sort of start conversations between landlords and their tenants by saying, so you are certain neighborhoods, we are seeing a rise in the number of people who are moving out, or a rising in the number of estates that are becoming, or houses that are becoming empty because of tenants moving out and landlords being left without tenants. And maybe there's a conversation that can happen where you as Kara then participate in opening doors for them, or championing their cause in the doors that you can open with government.
Just like I said, it's a contractual obligation. But of course, what we've been able to do as Kara is to engage our members directly and tell them that we must be able to have a conversation. We must be able to come together as tenants and landlords so that we can be able to have an agreement on what is the best way forward. We've been able to handle a few cases where the tenants approached us with their challenges in terms of rent payment. Then we are able to engage the landlord and have to come to an agreement on how to either vary the contract or come up with some kind of an agreement on how the issue is going to be addressed. The situation in which we find ourselves is that for a very long time, when we were developing the tenant-landlord contract, nobody had ever thought that we'll have a situation where we are completely unable to meet our obligations because of the pandemic. So if you look at most tenant and landlord contracts, there's no that clause of force majeure. It's called the natural calamities, where people can be able to say that because of this particular natural calamity, I can't be able to meet my obligation. So that clause has always been missing because this was never foreseen. And now, in the absence of that particular clause, then the best way forward is for the two parties to be able to have an agreement. And Kara has been acting more or less like an arbitrator, so that we are in the middle and we listen to what the tenant is saying, we listen to what the landlord is saying, and then we say, can we have a middle ground where each party can be able to have some kind of reprieve? We don't have anybody adversely affected.
Are there examples? Sorry, Henry, to interrupt. Are there examples that maybe you could give us, without giving us the details of the participants, where you could say that Kara came in and this is how we were able to benefit the landlords and their tenants and resolve a situation?
Of course, I wouldn't give individual particulars, but I can tell you that, for instance, in Buruburu Estate, we had a situation where we had to negotiate between the tenants and the landlords and come up with an agreement that will be able to make sense. So, of course, the cases are different because there are those who cannot pay completely, there are those who might want to have a reduction of the rent, and there are those who might want to have a deferral of the rent payment. They say, give me 2 or 3 months for me to organize myself. So if you look at it holistically, then you see that you have to deal with each case on a case-by-case basis, because somebody comes with different proposals. Somebody might say that on my side, I'm not able to pay rent because I've been laid off completely from work. Then we say, what do we do? Can the landlord be able to accommodate you maybe for a reasonable period of time as you try to find out what would be the plan B? And if there are those people who feel that they want to have like a reduction of rent, then of course you have to discuss with the landlord. This has been, of course, a bit of a challenge, because the landlord would rather say that let's put on hold maybe for 2-3 months and then you pay up rather than have a reduction. But there are others, the landlords who have on their own obligation opted to have that reduction of rent so that they can accommodate their tenants. So like I said, it's a case-by-case basis depending on the kind of proposal that each tenant is able to make and then what the landlord is able to accommodate. This being a contract that was entered between the two parties, you cannot be able to come in like with a stick, for instance, and say that you must do this, you must not do this. It has to be a mutual agreement, and it has to be within the parameters that both parties are comfortable with. So in different estates, we've handled some of these cases, but of course, without going into the details, what we normally say that each case is unique in its own way, because the landlords and the tenants are different people. So you listen to what is on the table in terms of the various proposals, and then you make an arbitration and come up to an amicable solution or way forward, where each party can be able to accommodate the final agreement that has been arrived at. So we've been able to handle that, and of course we are looking forward to a situation where we can be able to have a legislative framework that accommodates this. Of course, that's already on the offing. I'm sure you know about the Pandemic Response Management Bill that is being fronted by Senator Sakaja, that's trying now to provide a legislative framework where this can actually be anchored in law, and people can be able to make reference to specific clauses of law and say, this is how we are going to address this particular issue.
Okay. Henry Ochieng, thank you very much for joining us today, and thank you for sharing your insights with us.
Thank you very much.